somehow.
Conception. It was like conscious conception.
Okay, so what about 20 weeks and 1 day, or minus 20 weeks, minus 1 day?
Well, so the difference there is that before it gains consciousness, there's absolutely nothing immoral with just blending it up with a blender and shooting it out. It doesn't matter at all. After it's conscious, it becomes a justified immoral action where the amount of suffering that the woman is going to have to go through justifies her in using lethal self-defense to protect her body. So before it's conscious, it's just literally not immoral to abort the baby. There's literally nothing wrong with it whatsoever. It's only immoral after it becomes conscious, but then it becomes a justified immoral action, killing in self-defense.
Okay, so who assigns these values? Because to me it seems that we're talking about values, right? Minus or plus
I
one
believe
day.
in moral realism, so I think there's an objective moral value, which is consciousness.
And by what standard do you justify this moral realism? Like,
Physics.
are you, I'm sorry?
Physics. It's like a law of physics. That's my view.
The law of physics when it comes to a child?
Morality. Objective
Oh,
morality is
so
a law of physics.
objective morality is a law of physics. I'm not sure that I understand what that means. Can you like take it a bit
Google
further?
moral naturalism.
No, I mean it in the way that you're ascribing to it. That's what I'm trying to like
Google moral naturalism.
get to know. But what is your
Google
definition of that?
what? Like my definition of morality is the same. It's the principles that differentiate right from wrong.
Yeah, but you ascribe physics to your understanding
Yeah,
of
they're
morals. I
determined
mean,
by a law.
okay, so morals and laws of physics to you are equivalent in a sense, right?
Yes, Google moral naturalism. I've already answered this like 6 times. Google moral naturalism. Morality is a natural phenomenon. It is a natural facts about the world. Moral naturalism. That's literally what it means.
Okay. So would you say then if this is I mean, because this is not just a clear definition, it's a worldview, I would say, right?
But I don't know. It's not a worldview because it doesn't say anything about like ontology. It just says there is a moral law.
Right. It does not say anything about ontology, but what about the epistemic claim to God?
How will we know it? Like we don't. We don't have any evidence of it yet. It's just a hypothesis.
Okay, I see. So then you do believe in when you talk about moral reality or naturalism and whatnot, you have the worldview that everything is confined within the moral structure as reality presents itself, and at
I
the
have
same
no
time that
idea what
means
that means. So
you
like
don't know what that means.
morality is a particular kind of a field or a particular kind of law. Not everything is that law. It's like space-time is a particular kind of a field. Not everything is in space-time.
All right. So okay,
This is
so I wanted to ask
irrelevant to
you
the
a question.
conversation, though.
Okay, I wanted to ask you a question because the reason I came here is there's my friend dragged me to this. His name is Ed Fries, and he's been using a lot of your talking points when it comes to trying to establish some sort of, objective morality. And we're talking about the best of all possible worlds, and we had, some sort of back and forth and disagreement. Can you explain to us what is it that you mean when you're talking about the best of all possible worlds
That would be if we
in a
imagined that if we imagined the law of physics was the most powerful law and forced everything to be the way the law wanted it to be, it would look like the best of all possible worlds. That's just the maximization of the moral law is the best of all possible worlds. So like if we imagine gravity was maximized, everything would be collapsed into a black hole. If morality was maximized, it would be a morally perfect world and look like the best of all possible worlds.
All right, I got you. So what he said, he's here if he wants to speak. What he said to me is that so you have one person which is ensconced within their own universe, and then you have a multiplicity of other people which they all reside within their own
If they
universes.
want, yeah.
Okay, is that correct so far? So you have one person within their own
If they
universe.
want that. So it's up to you. Like you can have your own universe and be away from anybody else. You can build a co-op universes of people and have you all like have equal partners or whatever. You can become a slave to somebody else and live in their universe, like the Christian God, if you wanted to. It's up to you.
Okay, so given that you have these multiplicity of universes and with each individual kind of assigning pretty much their own values and constraints within their own universe.
No, they couldn't change the universal law that's moral. Moral would apply to all of them.
Ah, okay. So the universal laws cannot be changed no matter what kind of universe you do happen to reside within.
Right, because your laws only apply to your universe, not anybody else's. So you could change whatever you wanted in your universe, but you wouldn't be able to affect anybody else's. So if you wanted to say, in my universe, it's moral to drown babies, that's fine. You wouldn't be able to
Mhm.
affect anybody else's or make anybody live in your universe.
Okay. Um, Ed, can you come off mute so you understand this point so we can take it further if you want? By the way, I'm sorry. I did not mean to intrude or I just wanted to make this clear because he's using a lot of your talking points and I'm not really understanding in the way that he's trying to use them.
Okay, do you have like an argument or something?
Well, I would want him to come off mute and use the same argument he made against me, and then I would give you my counter argument and my feedback,
Well, just
so we can
steelman
get
it.
more.
Try to represent his argument the best you can.
Okay,
Steelman it.
right. So to Steelman, his argument was that even though you do live in these universes, to him it meant that there's only one person that resides within this universe, and if someone wanted to come to your universe, would have to be voluntary. So let's say that TJump
Yep.
is in one universe and me, I don't know what's my name here, Enigma is in another universe. I cannot come to universe unless I voluntarily choose to, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what if I come to universe by a showcase of like force?
You
Because
can't.
what my
Physically
universe,
impossible.
okay, but hear me out for a second. So what if my universe is contrived the way that it's structured, given my own volition and however I want it to structure, is that my universe is precisely contrary to yours, that my universe is only
Nothing you
people
can
that,
do in your universe can in any way affect mine unless I consent to it.
okay,
Ever, under any
but,
circumstance. Literally physically impossible. Nothing you could ever do in your universe will ever affect mine unless I consent to it.
well, again, in your universe, of course not, and in my universe, of course not. But is there no way as some sort of like a bridge that I
No,
can come
there's
to your
zero
universe?
ways. The only bridge into my universe is I have to let you in. So it's based on
Okay,
consent. If I consent to allow you in, that's literally the only way you
perfect.
have access to my universe.
All right, perfect. So how is that any different than the kind of universe that a Judeo-Christian kind of, theologian would adhere to?
Say that again?
How is that universe any different than a Judeo-Christian theologian would adhere to when they're talking about their own God?
Um, well, they could, like, in the theologian Christian worldview, there's a hell where people are sent who don't want to be there and burn for all eternity. And there's people in heaven who have to worship a god and don't get their own universe. And there's an earth where people were sent and they didn't consent to being there. So there's lots of immoral things like drowning babies that happen in this world. So I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay, so let's take it one at a time. So the only difference that you said, you mentioned hell. You mentioned that these people that are within the universe that this Judeo-Christian God created, it was not voluntary. It's not like God came to you and asked you, hey, by the way, do you
Yeah,
want to be born
that's
in this
that's
universe? Right?
immoral. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so pretty much the fundamental difference is in my universe, it's impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to. In God's universe, he can force anyone to do anything he wants to, so it's a horribly immoral universe. So there's a pretty
Okay.
big
All
difference.
right.
It's like literally the
Well,
opposite.
okay. Well, but let's take a. I mean, if you want to talk about morally, wouldn't you say that within that universe that you have constructed, right, your own universe, TJumps universe, wouldn't you say that you're actually God? You're playing God within that
No,
universe.
because my role is the exact same as everyone else's. Everyone's equal. Even if the Christian God could potentially exist in my universe, he would get his own universe. He could set up any way he wanted to. So every single conscious agent would be equal. There's no God in this worldview.
Well, let's slow down for a second because I do not see that as valid. Because
What?
listen, you have TJump, you have me, Enigma, and all these other people that have their own universes, and on top of that,
Yep.
you have a universe which is Yahweh, right, or whatever you want to call them. So
Sure.
what's the distinction? Each one of these universes adheres to their own moral values and structures, wouldn't you say?
Sure. The difference is in mine, you can't force other people to do anything they don't consent to doing. In the Christian one, God is a mass murdering psychopath who forces lots of people to do lots of things they don't consent to doing. So those would all be
Well,
impossible in my worldview. It couldn't happen in my worldview unless they
can
all
you
consented to it.
can
So
you
it'd
give
be
me one
physically
instance?
impossible.
Okay, I'm sorry to cut you off. Can you give me one instance where this Yahweh forces people to do anything?
When he hardened Harold's heart, 2 Kings 2:22, when he sent the bears to maul the 40 kids, when he turned Saul's wife to salt, when he drowned all the people in the global flood for Noah, when he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, when he sends your soul here to suffer and die without your consent, when he told Adam and Eve not to eat the apple, when he took the legs away from the snake, killed Jesus, burn anyone who goes to hell who doesn't want to be in hell. That would be an example. All examples of cancer and death and aging and suffering that people don't want. Pretty much like all of the shit he ever did, more or less.
Okay, I see. Can we go through like one by one? Because
What do you mean go through? Like there's not. It's pretty much. It's if I didn't want this to happen to me aging. So let's say I don't want to age. I'm currently aging. God created the universe. He's immoral for doing that.
what again? So what if? Okay, so given your own argument, what if this is the best of all of the possible universes?
It's not because I'm
But
aging.
how do you, but how do you know that?
Because I can logically prove it using a syllogism. It's logically possible that I don't age, but I am aging. Therefore, that world isn't the case.
When you mean in a logical syllogism, when you tell me that you can prove it logically, what is it that you actually mean by so? We're talking about adhering to the laws of logic, right?
Yep.
Identity, non-contradiction, and
Good a minute.
uh, excluded middle. So, can you prove it in that manner?
Prove that it's logically possible. There is no logical contradiction in the statement. Therefore, it's logically possible.
Okay, I see. So, if it does not logically contradict, therefore, would you say that it's absolutely true, or would you say that there is a possibility, at least a hint, that it can be
No,
true
no.
because it's
So
logically
if there's no logical contradiction, then that means it's logically possible. So
yeah,
if
I
there's
agree
a
with you.
moral statement like mine, and mine says, here is a logically possible world that's better than ours, then that would prove it's ours isn't the best of all possible worlds because here's a logically possible better world.
Well, I'm not so quick to jump into that it would prove such and such, but I would say I would agree with you that if you can manage to prove it logically by adhering to the laws of logic, then there is a possibility. But then when we talk about the possibilities, right, there's a lot of
Well, no, no.
caveats.
So if you're saying that this is the best of all possible worlds, then you're saying it's logically impossible for there to be a better world. That's what you're saying. So if I can name one thing that could be better, then I have disproved that this is the best of all possible worlds. So child cancer, if that didn't exist, the world would be better. Since it does exist, this world is not the best of all possible worlds.
But wouldn't you say to me that, wouldn't you agree with me that when you say something can be better, it depends on, in what kind of how to say it to
Right.
you.
I'm a moral realist. I think there's an objectively correct answer there, which is morality. So I think
Yeah,
morality tells us
right,
that.
right. I
And
agree
so
with you there.
God giving kids child cancer is immoral. And if you disagree with that, well, you're insane.
Well, no, I will not disagree with. You know what? Let me come clean to you. I'm a Christian and a theologian.
I guessed.
Okay, right. So obviously, you and I are in the same camp here when we're talking about, moral absolutes and whatnot. And when we're talking about, especially when it comes to like empirical studies, what is fact and fiction, you know, independent of, about your own subjectivity or preference and so on, right? I think we would agree in that.
Sure. Yes, we're both moral realists.
Okay. So what I'm asking you is that in this whole multiple worlds or universes scenario, your claim is that your universe, given that it does not pose any sort of restrictions, therefore it's better. How is that the case? Because maybe I'm wrong in here, but let me give you an example. Like, for example, in America, we have this thing called freedom of speech, the First Amendment, right? And so on. Now, there's cases where the freedom of speech is not congruent, especially if I'm like in a theater or, I don't know, in a rally, and I say I have a gun or I say there's fire. That will cause people to stampede, and that will cause a lot of chaos,
Yeah, there
right?
are no such examples for God.
What do you, I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?
God's an all-powerful being. So him allowing cancer and rape and murder and death and parasites that eat out the eyes of children, those aren't justified limitations. Like not being able to say fire in a crowded theater is a justified limitation because of our physical limitations. We don't have the power to be able to adjudicate true and false things in those kinds of situations. So if you tell someone a false thing, they might believe it, which might cause a stampede. And because we're fleshy water bubbles, we can get killed from that. And so there's lots of limitations there. God is an all-powerful being. He doesn't get any excuses. So in the case of God, if I can just imagine a better world, then by definition, him being all-powerful means he'd be able to create that better. And so if that better world doesn't exist and we're stuck in this worse world, that proves this isn't the best of all possible worlds.
Okay, well, at least there you've dealt with one of his omnis. You said all powerful, but what about the omniscient part? What if
What about
his
it?
okay? Well, what about it is so if you and I pretend
Well, it
to
doesn't
say
like
that
so. Let's
God,
suppose he is omniscient. It doesn't matter. He could know absolutely everything. It doesn't make a difference. It makes a zero difference. So he still could have created a world without murder, but he didn't. And saying that,
okay,
well, maybe there's some justified reason. Like, nope, you could logically do it without that. Just make it optional. Say, God, God's going to create his world, his favorite little pet world with rape and murder and cancer and stuff, which has some kind of a magical good thing at the end of the world. And
all right,
he could have said, would you like to go to this world I designed, or would you like to opt out? And giving people the option would have been a morally superior world than forcing people into it, meaning there is a better possible world, which is not the one he created.
all right. Can I ask you a question? And I don't mean any sort of offense by this,
Sure,
but
ask the question.
have you read the Bible
Multiple times, cover to cover.
multiple times, cover to cover? So if I were to, I mean, since you read it, I think maybe you know my answer to this, right? Where I could say to
What?
you, well, when you were talking about giving people a choice, I would say to you that he did give people a choice, and they chose to go against him, and now they're
When
suffering the
did I
consequences.
get a choice? When did I get a choice to go to this world or to opt out and go to my own world?
You as TJump? Well, no, you did not get that
Yeah, me.
choice.
When did my consciousness, get a choice to say, I don't want
You,
to go to your crappy world. I'd like to go to my own?
you never did. You never got the
Right. So
choice. No.
so there's a better world, a better morally perfect world
Well,
that isn't this one where he just gave each
well,
individual the choice.
okay.
Saying that your parents got a choice, even if that was true, which Adam and Eve didn't because they didn't have the knowledge then anyway. But even if it was true, you can't punish all of the kids for what the parents did. That's immoral. That's literally an added immoral thing God did. So even if he gave Adam and Eve the choice, If he doesn't give each and every one of their children the choice also, then he's immorally punishing the children or immorally forcing the children into that world without their consent, which is not the best of all possible worlds. You can imagine a better one. He just asks each and every person individually, would you like to go here? Would you like to go here?
Okay. Let's say that, okay, let, for the sake of it, let's say that that was an option where before you were created in whatever way possible, that God came to you and he said, hey, TJump, do you want to be in this world or not? What would you have said?
His world, no. His world is shit. Like, no, screw off.
Okay, so in the way that you're answering that question, right? Because the only thing I asked is, would you want to be in this world? But you and I both know that it's far more difficult uh, to have an
What?
understanding as to what this world is. That
God's
you've
all
got to
powerful. He can snap his fingers and give me perfect understanding. He can snap his fingers and give me knowledge of if I had lived in that world for
understand.
33 years. What?
I understand that, but why would he do that? Why would he give you perfect quote unquote understanding? What
I
difference
mean,
does
if he
that make?
wasn't a dick, like if he wasn't a dick and decided to give you understanding and give you the option to go to part of his crappy world or not, yeah, that'd be great. He wouldn't do that if he was a dick.
But what if he did grant you that, and now all of a sudden you have perfect understanding as you're pleading to it, and then all of a sudden every
I'd
person
be like,
that
no,
does have
screw that. I'm going to my own universe. Like, no,
well, hold
you're
on,
doing this
hold on
shit.
a second. Hold on a second. So if he gave you perfect understanding, couldn't you say that when you have that perfect understanding, each and every single one of us would choose to be like, yes.
No,
Why not?
because no one would choose cancer and death and rape. Like, no.
Well, but you're
I mean,
following. Okay,
if a God existed who did give us all the option to be here and we all chose to be here, yes, that would no longer be immoral. But that would then contradict exactly what the Bible says. So it's possible, like a God did do that. It just wouldn't be the Christian God. The Christian God wouldn't exist.
in what way do you mean that? Because I think I lost you there.
So it's possible a God existed and gave us all the choice, and we're all the crazy people who decided to just be in the crappy world. That's possible. But if that's the case, that contradicts the Bible and the origin story of the Bible, like Adam and Eve and all the different ways God forced people to do things they didn't want to do, like hardening Pharaoh's heart and turning people to salt. So it's possible, but that would just contradict the story of the Bible. And he also just left that part out. He probably should have included that part. By the way, you all consented to be here.
So, all right. Let's see where to take this. When you talk about objective morality, and you included that within like physics and the nature
Moral
of reality,
naturalism. Yeah.
naturalism, right? So now, what does that mean for something which is kind of opposite to that? Like,
I
for
have no idea what
example,
that means.
when there are people that proclaim that miracles have happened and so on and so forth,
Well, it
what does that
wouldn't
mean
be,
within your worldview? That I'm sorry.
well, I think they're wrong, but it wouldn't be make a difference. Like miracles could happen and morality could still be physical. Those wouldn't be contradictory statements.
Okay, so everything that you do experience in this reality to you all is substantiated or explained by physical means and mechanism, right?
Yes, which is the consensus in every academic field and all of the evidence indicates.
Okay, so now you brought on some sort of empirical type of
Yes,
constraints.
you asked about like is the universe and everything we experience all physical, and all of the evidence in all of the academic fields says it is. Yes. None of them say there's any other thing. If there was, I'd be happy to admit it. Like I have no problem with a non-physical thing. There's just no evidence of such a thing existing.
I see. And what do you think would constitute any sort of evidence which would be
Novel,
contrary,
testable predictions.
novel, testable predictions? So if me as a Christian was able to give you a prediction, like let's say that I tell you that TJump, stick your hand outside of your window, and lightning is going to fall in 3, 2, 1,
That'd
and
be
it
good.
falls
Yeah.
right on your hand, and then you can see lightning in your hand, and I tell you when you close your
Yes, that would be
hand,
great.
lightning is going
That
to
is
disappear.
great evidence. Yes.
That would be great evidence, right?
Yep. Yep.
Would that I don't know, kind of shift you over,
Yes, that would change my prior, so I'd be more likely to believe. I'd probably take multiple different examples of that. If there were a sufficient number of those, I would eventually believe. I don't think one would be enough, but that would definitely count as evidence and move the counter over to more likely that whatever you were claiming existed existed.
Hmm. Well, not to be you know,
Do you want me to stick my hand out the window? Do you want to see if it'll work? Because I got a window.
no, no,
I'm doing it. Go for it. Go for it.
no, no. I don't think I have that authority. No, I'm just interested because I've spoken to a lot of
So
different.
before
Okay.
I've said that the best evidence for God I've ever seen from any religion comes from Hinduism because they predicted the age of the earth within like 5% accuracy. So it was like very, very close. Close enough, like better than many scientific predictions, is extremely accurate. They predicted in the Bhagavad Gita, which was written 6,000 years ago, that the earth is 4.3 billion years old. It's 4.5, but it was close. So that is an actual legitimate prediction made by people 6,000 years ago about the age of the earth, which was correct. That is evidence. It's not great. It's obviously pretty tiny, minute,
Right.
but that's real evidence. That's what real evidence looks like. If there was a bunch of those in the Bhagavad Gita and they got a ton of things right, that would be pretty good evidence to believe in the Bhagavad Gita.
Right, right. But even if I were to be within that sort of religion, right, it would not be sufficient, at least for me, thinking about this like intellectually, for me
Well,
to
yeah,
just
just
believe
one.
well, your God is
One
right
wouldn't be.
all of a sudden.
You need more. So like if it predicted DNA is a double helix, the age of the Earth is 4.5 billion, the age of the universe is 13.8. Here's when the extinctions happened. Here's where you're going to find these fossils. Like if it said all of that stuff, I would believe that that book has some access to truth I don't. So if it said all of that 6,000 years ago and got it right, and it said some more things that we didn't know about yet, I'd probably believe those more things. I would be justified in believing that book got those unknown things correct because it got those previous things correct.
Yeah, I see. I see. Well, as a Christian, I do not believe that the Bible is a scientific book, at least in any sense when it comes to our current understanding of what science is and the methodology. I don't think it was meant to be like that. Because I mean,
Yes, it's not
even if you
evidence.
look
I
at it,
agree.
even if you look at even if you look at it historically, I mean, those people were much more busy of emptying their chamber pots and uh,
Right. So I agree with you that yes, there's nothing in the Bible that's actually evidence. I agree, but that means that there's no way to differentiate the Bible from Harry Potter. Harry Potter also isn't a science book. So if you wanted a book that actually was justifiable evidence, the Bhagavad Gita is about as close as you can get.
well, there I disagree with you because if you look at the Bible historically speaking, right, and if you look at the way that it is written, it tells you about the people that were there, the time period.
So
It
does
tells
Harry
you about
Potter.
locations.
So does
Sure,
Harry Potter.
so does Harry Potter, but Harry Potter you cannot confirm.
We
That's the
can't. We
difference.
can confirm like 90% of the facts about the Muggle world are correct in Harry Potter. So like King's Cross Station is there. It has 10 platforms. Those are there. All the street names are there. The bar names are there. It talks about all these different locations, which we can literally go to and say, oh, look, that thing in the Harry Potter is exactly where it said it was. They actually have maps of the city. Like, yeah, these were all correct. Is that evidence that witches and wizards exist? No.
Well,
So
I
the
mean,
fact that it
this.
gets some historical facts correct isn't evidence of magic.
Well, I'm not appealing to magic. I'm saying that, I'm trying to be gracious to you, and this point that you made right now as to people not being able to differentiate between fact and fiction, I don't think that's a good point for you to make, or any other person which is from your camp or an atheist. That's just complete nonsense.
What's nonsense?
What is nonsense is that there's a lot of things that can be confirmed in the Bible. When you read Harry
Right.
Potter, you know it's a fictional book. When you read
But
the
that doesn't
Bible,
matter. The intent of the author is irrelevant. So we can confirm many of the facts in Harry Potter, like King's Cross Station, like the express trains, like the bar names. All of those are confirmable historical facts that we know are true. The fact that you can confirm facts in a story doesn't mean that all the facts you can't confirm are also true. So the fact that we can confirm mundane things like locations in the Bible isn't evidence that Jesus rose from the dead, fed 5,000, walked on water, burning bush,
no,
talking snake, talking donkey. Like none of that is
course,
supported. The fact that there are some historical
it's
events
not.
that the Bible gets right is irrelevant.
Of course not, and I'm not making that sort of a claim. What I'm saying to you is that I think you need to properly distinguish between fact and fiction. Now, Harry Potter would be ultimately in our history books as a fiction, as a movie.
That's irrelevant. It's literally irrelevant. It's an appeal to motive fallacy.
But how is it irrelevant? Like, do you think that 100 years from now, when people are reading Harry Potter, they're going to think that this was an actual occurrence?
No, because it's irrelevant to the argument. The argument is that just because a book gets some historical events correct doesn't mean the book is reliable. It doesn't matter
What?
what the intent of the author was. It's literally irrelevant to the argument. The argument is full stop. Some books say things about history that were correct. Does that make the book reliable?
Well,
No.
the only difference between you and I is that, you would take, if I were to take away the juju, the resurrection, you would hold to the Bible as being historically correct. Not only you, but as
No.
historians have held for, well, you would, because you would have no
Well,
other
no, like
choice.
there's tons of historical mistakes in the Bible. Exodus didn't happen. Noah didn't exist. Abraham didn't exist. Cain and Abel didn't exist. Most of the matriarchs and patriarchs in the Old Testament didn't exist. Moses definitely didn't write the Pentateuch. He didn't exist to, and it was written before he existed, or I think anyway. A lot of the historical facts in the Bible are just literally wrong. So, I mean, if you would forget about those, maybe.
Well, I will challenge you that I will tell, this is a direct challenge. There's nothing within the Bible which is historically wrong. And I would challenge you to prove me wrong on that.
Global flood, 6-day creation, pi doesn't equal 3. Like there's literally thousands
Talking
of them.
about historical accounts.
Yes, I
The
listed many
whole,
of those.
sure, I happen to be a evolutionary theologian. So for
I
me,
bet.
3 billion-year-old Earth or 6,000-year-old makes no difference. Because I look at it at the context of how it was described in that day and age from the people that wrote it.
Yes, so
So
the
to me,
experts who do that say that there are tons of errors in the Bible. It's literally like their job. Scientific and historical errors in the Bible list. I think
all I'm saying is
Wiki's
this.
good.
All I'm saying is this. I don't think you're able to
You're breaking up. I can't
sustain.
hear you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said I don't think you can sustain that sort of argumentation where you say that, trying to compare the Bible with Harry Potter. I think that's just, in a
It's a literal
equivocation
argument that
fallacy.
has a one-to-one correlation. So it 100% applies to the Bible and Harry Potter equally. They are exact analogies. The analogy is the fact that a book has some historical facts in it isn't
But
evidence that the book is
there's nothing
reliable.
there's nothing historical within Harry Potter.
Yes, there literally is. I literally listed them. So, like
There- there-
King's Cross Station, that's a historical thing. They list historical events like the shaking of the bridge. List historical places like
there's
beer bar places. They are literally historical locations in Harry Potter. The fact that they're in modern history doesn't. They're still historical.
okay. Do you think I can say the same thing about Star Wars?
No, I don't think they're. I don't think so. I don't. There's no like Earth in Star Wars, is there?
There is an Earth. Well, I mean,
There's
there
a
you
there's
go.
a United
Earth.
States in Star Wars.
There's an Earth.
They
I'm
said that they
saying,
got the Earth. I guess that would be historically accurate.
yeah, they got the Earth right, but I'm saying there's a difference between, trying to assign geographical locations. Like Star Wars and Harry Potter will never go into history as being historically accurate
I
as
already,
there
I
will
already,
be
I already addressed that. So all of the facts in history that are confirmable in Harry Potter are correct. Every one of them. King's Cross Station, the twisting of the bridge, the bar locations, every single confirmable fact in Harry Potter is historically accurate. You're making an appeal to motive fallacy by saying, oh, but it was intended as a fiction. Literally doesn't matter to the argument. Literally irrelevant. No one cares. The point is that it doesn't matter if
right.
even every single fact in a book that is historically verifiable is found to be correct. That doesn't matter for anything. That's absolute garbage shit. No one cares. That's the point. It doesn't matter if it's fictional or non-fictional. Science fiction, fantasy makes no difference. No one cares. In history, evidence is like, this is the difference between evidence that has an implicit empirical basis versus an explicit empirical basis. If I told you I saw a dog, that would be reasonable to believe. If I told you I saw a unicorn, that's unreasonable to believe. It doesn't matter how many times I tell you I see a dog and I'm correct. It'll never be reasonable to believe I see a unicorn. Ever.
Unless there's evidence for
Yeah,
it.
yeah, you have to find independent evidence of a unicorn. But just my say-so, historical testimony will never be that. So no historical testimony will ever be reliable for miracles, magic, mythical creatures, the paranormal, supernatural, UFOs. And so nothing, it doesn't matter how many facts the Bible got correct. It's as trustworthy on miracles as Harry Potter is on magic. They are exactly the same.
Well, the only thing that separates you and I is, our worldview. Yours atheistic and mine.
Probably taller than you
Yours,
too.
you're what?
Probably taller than you. 6'2".
Yeah, I'm 6 foot, so yeah, you are taller than.
Three's mine.
But that can be, verifiable in that sense, right? I cannot say to you that,
Sure.
well, I'm taller than you, and then when we meet each other, well,
I'm 8'7".
right. But don't you think that there should be some sort of like, how to say it to you, because to me it's all about like worldview, right? You happen to live within this worldview that everything is just natural, everything that you see, you have to
Well, I
measure
don't care
things.
about worldview.
You
I don't think
don't?
worldview matters. I care about epistemology. I care about, do you have a way to differentiate imagination from reality? I don't care what that conclusion leads to. You could, if magic and miracles and fairies are real, that's fine, as long as you have a way to differentiate that they're not just imaginary. My epistemology shows the natural world is real, and it doesn't have any evidence to believe any of the other stuff is real. It has nothing to do with worldview. It just has to do with basic epistemology. Do you have a way to
Well,
differentiate imagination from reality?
don't you think it does? Like I think you live in the States, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you see all of the craziness which is happening within the States when you have like two different political sides, and there's a lot of misunderstanding and there's a lot of bullshit going on. When people are denying basic facts about, like, for example, biology and sex, to the point that they say that, hey, well, you know who you are? Well, it's whatever it is
Yeah.
that you wish.
Yeah, but which side is the one denying the facts? I don't care about politics. But in the religion, which side is the one that's denying the facts? The science people who literally care about nothing but facts, or the religious people?
Well, I'm saying to you that if I were to employ my worldview, it would be far more consistent because there's these arguments that are always made, in contrast to my worldview, which are like, oh, people back then, they were superstitious. What do they
What?
know?
I
And
don't care about
now
that.
I say to them, well, look at the kind of society that we're living in now, where they do not know the difference between a man and a woman.
What
Don't you
does
think
that
that
have
that's
to do with the argument? So my argument is that um, miracles, magic, mythical creatures, paranormal, supernatural UFOs, no amount of testimony, then or now, is justifiable evidence to believe in any of the magical shit. And that's not, I don't care what the people back then believed. I don't care how smart they are. I don't care how educated they were. Simply the fact that we know how the brain works and people make shit up all the time, not just back then, but today and always. Testimony isn't evidence of miracles. And so I don't really care about what people believed back then.
I study psychology, and when you tell me that people know how the brain works, I'm not so convinced.
What? No, we know how the brain doesn't work. We know how it makes mistakes. We know lots of the ways that the brain makes mistakes.
True, true.
And so when
There's
somebody says they see a unicorn 500 years ago, it's more likely, oh, it's one of those mistakes that we know about how the brain works. Schizophrenia, delusions, cognitive biases, communal reinforcement, any of those things, bereavement delusion, like those are probably better explanation than unicorn actually exists. And it applies to every miracle, every magic, every mythical creature.
of course, but allow me to make this case point. I infinitely know what you're not thinking of at every single moment.
I have no idea what that even means.
I can know what you're not thinking of at every single moment.
Sure,
That
like a round
what
square.
that,
I could never
what
think of
that
a
means
round
is
square.
that what I say, what comes out of my mouth next, you would never have thought about
Yeah,
ever,
round
no
square.
matter how much time.
Yes,
Well,
round
not
square.
not necessarily like a square circle. I don't want to go into like a taxi cab geometry and all that bullshit. All I'm saying is
Taxicab
that
geometry is legit. It's not. There's no logical contradiction with taxicab math.
I get it. I get it. It's legit in a sense. But what I'm saying is that you have made this argument that, well, there's this sort of like ad infinitum of, because
What?
when I said to you that I study psychology, you said, well, first you said we know how the brain operates, and then you said we know how the brain operates under circumstances. Well, I can say the same thing ad infinitum about anything.
I have no
And
idea what you're
then,
talking about. So I said that we know very specific circumstances in which the brain does not operate correctly. We know that it makes certain mistakes in very certain instances. This isn't an infinite claim. It's like optical illusions. We know the optical illusions. We know the specific fallacies, biases, illusions, delusions, misconceptions that the brain produces. The precitric fallacy, the type 1 and type 2 errors, we literally have names for them. There's not infinitely many of these. We know the finite number of them, but we've proven they exist. We've proven these things exist in reality, and we know what they
so,
do. And so if someone says, I saw a unicorn, and we know that there's a bias or a delusion that causes sights of unicorns or leprechauns. I know there's one for leprechauns. And then we can say, yeah, they probably didn't actually see a living leprechaun. They probably had that delusion where you see leprechaun. And that's
all
always a
right.
better, significantly better argument.
Well, yeah, in that case, I would agree with you that, of course, it is.
And that's what applies to literally every one of the miracle and magic cases in every history textbook ever.
Well, there's a difference, I would say.
Which is,
And so- and the difference would start with, well, I mean, if there is one shred of evidence, right, which even you or anyone else might not either consider or want to consider, if this is true, what does it mean for our reality if this happens to be true? Like, for example, let's say
then
the
you could have
resurrection.
evidence of things other than the delusion. So like if someone says they saw a unicorn and we would initially only know about the psychological condition that causes unicorn delusions, then it's only rational for us to believe they have a delusion. But if later we find like a fossil of unicorns or something, then we can go back and be like, oh, look, there's another empirically verified hypothesis that could explain this. And they both have real evidence. The unicorn actually existed and the delusion actually existed. So those would both be on equal footing right now. But until you actually provide that other piece of evidence to raise the priors of unicorns, then the priors are garbage, and so the only rational conclusion is it's a delusion. So you would first need to provide that other independent, verifiable piece of evidence that the supernatural is real before you could invoke the supernatural as a possible explanation of historical events.
I mean, I think that's still based on belief. I would not be able to present to you some sort of factual case to convince you. I don't think I can
What?
do that.
Well, because there isn't any evidence, but there could be, like novel testable predictions, like the lightning thing you mentioned, if you could actually provide evidence. I believe in the supernatural friend named Bob, and Bob will zap your hand with lightning, and it'll be a little lightning bolt in your hand. That would be evidence of the supernatural agent Bob. And then you could say, well, Bob also did this in history, and then that would then be better than it was before, because now you've raised the priors of Bob, because you've demonstrated there's a reason to believe he exists with the lightning bolt thing. But once you have some kind of empirical, novel, testable prediction that the supernatural exists, that raises the priors and it becomes a legitimate explanation of historical events. But until then, it's not.
Let me give you a twist. So, what if you and I were to talk for like an extended time, and I were to come and join you every single night, and then let's say that 6 months pass, and now all of a sudden, based on our communication, you change your belief, and each and every single person in here, what you stand for, and then all of a sudden you
I have no idea what you're
are now.
asking right now. So you're saying that we simply talk and my belief changes, like I had an epilepsy or something? Like,
No epilepsy. That just by you talking to me and having this conversation, like let's say 6 months from now, that you change your
well, that's
worldview
not going to happen.
completely.
So
Well,
that would
let's
only
say that.
happen if I have an epileptic seizure.
Well, okay, so just for the sake of it, let's just say that it did happen, and now all of a sudden you've changed your position. Now you believe in God, and all these
I would
people
be an
over here in
idiot.
this chat. Let's just give me that. Just give me that for a second. If you did do that and you changed so drastically, and all these people that listen to you all of a sudden cannot fucking understand like what the hell happened, right? And they would say the same thing you're saying to me now,
Yes,
right?
they
They
would
would say,
only be
well,
rational to believe that I had an epileptic seizure. There would be zero rationality for them to believe I actually met God. That would be stupid.
uh,
Personal
but
experience, personal
that's,
testimony, hearsay, none of those are evidence.
don't you think that given this kind of worldview that you hold, you're kind of restricted in a sense? What if God, instead
No.
of showing you like, one second, instead of showing you lightning in your hand, instead he changes your heart?
Like an epileptic seizure?
Not the seizure, just you're changed, bro. You feel different now. Not seizures, not like you did not fall off the steps
Yes.
and hit
So
your head.
if I changed my belief off of a feeling, that would be stupid. That's not an epistemically justified reason to believe
Not,
anything.
not,
I have
not,
a feeling.
not to cheapen it, right? You're saying a
What?
feeling. I'm saying,
You
okay,
said
to
feeling.
ask it like, no, I did not even use that word, but I'm saying to you that you change, your heart is changed. You called it a feeling. But how do you think people come to any sort of belief system? Do you think that each and every single one of, people that are roaming around Earth come through some sort of means of, rationale? That's just,
If it's
I
a
don't think that
rational belief, then yes. Otherwise, it's not a rational belief. So, like if someone says the moon is 255,000 miles away because we can bounce radio waves off it, and it takes 2.5 seconds on average for it to hit the moon, and then 2.5 seconds to hit back, 5 seconds total. The speed of sound or the speed of light is x. Calculated out. Therefore, the moon is 255,000 miles away. That's all rationality. Like I didn't have a feeling that the moon was 255,000 miles away. I had a calculation based on evidence. So for the belief to be rational, you would need evidence. If I just changed because of a feeling, I'm an idiot.
Okay. So given that you were at first you had no prior knowledge of how far away the moon was and so on and so forth, or anything else, right? You know, take me through the scientific method. Like the first step is observation. Now, why don't you say that not let's not call it a feeling, but let's call it like a belief, faith. The reason why I say that is because, well, first of all, you would have to establish or, think to yourself that whatever it is that you're witnessing out there is true,
What?
right?
I'm not following. I'm not following the
Whatever it is
question.
that you're witnessing out there, you would have to believe that it should make rational sense.
I'm
That's the
still not
faith part.
following what you're saying right now.
If you and I are, let's say that we did not know the distance from the moon, we did not even know what the moon was. You and I were the first people that created a
Discovered the
telescope.
moon.
No, no, created a telescope. And both you
Okay.
and I are in the backyard, and we're both looking through the telescope, and we're seeing this thing, which we do not even know the name of, but we call it,
Yep.
let's say it's the moon, right?
Okay.
Both you and I would have to believe that this thing exists outside of ourselves to begin with, right?
No. Like I could believe it
No,
was a delusion, or I could believe it was a piece of speck on the telescope, or I could believe it was just refraction of light that wasn't actually there. Like you don't have to believe it's a thing. You start with different observations and say, if it's a thing, then we'll see it again tomorrow. Or if it's a thing, we'll see it with a new telescope. Or if it's a thing, we'll be able to interact with it in different ways. We'll move the telescope and still see it. And
no, no,
so we do
I
more
get it.
experimentation.
I get it. I just did not want to go through the hardship of going from like day one to like day 2000. You know what I mean? But ultimately,
Okay.
we would have to. My point was, we would
So,
have to
so we,
believe that.
first we would start with
Yeah.
doubt. We would start to say, is this a real thing or are we making a mistake? We would start with doubt. We wouldn't believe it. We would say, we have no idea what we're seeing right now. And we would want to know, is it real or is it fake? Is it imaginary? And then we would come up with a methodology to say, if it's real, here's what we would expect. We would expect that we'll see it again tomorrow. We expect that if we show other people, they will see it. And then we start doing tests. We come back tomorrow. We start to show other people. And if those people saw it, and if we saw it the next day, then we could rationally conclude it's a real thing. But we wouldn't start with believing it. We'd start with, we have no idea what we're seeing. One hypothesis is it's real. One hypothesis is it's fake. And then start making predictions. So you start with doubt, not with belief.
No, no. My point was not. Again, I did not go through the whole process because that would take too long. I'm saying
Okay.
ultimately, as you're observing this thing moving from its point and having different phases as the moon does, so on and so forth, ultimately you would have to believe after, let's say, like a year of observation that this is an actual thing. It's
Right. After
tangible,
we
it's
have evidence,
visible,
we would believe it's a thing. Yes.
right? But at the same time, you would believe that this is something. The belief within itself is congruent to the object that you're seeing because, well,
What?
it has to be there. After a year's time, it has to be there. I mean,
I have no idea what you're saying right now. Like
because I can
congruent? I'm
say
not
to
sure what
you,
you mean.
because I can say to you that although I observed it for like a year, I'm still not sure that this thing is actually there. And not only
Okay.
me, but 1,000 other people, right?
Yeah, but that would be irrational.
Yeah, perfect, right. To a certain point, it would be irrational to refute
Right.
what you're observing,
Yes.
which means that you would have to go with your senses and be like,
What?
yeah, this thing is there, dude.
No, we'd go with the evidence. So I'd say, I wouldn't say, well, look, I can see it. I'd say, the fact that I made the predictions that we would see it again this night, the fact that I made the predictions it would have phases, the fact that I made the predictions other people would see it. I predicted all these things before we knew it, and I got it right. So my hypothesis that it's a real thing was able to predict the future successfully, which is evidence it's a real thing. Your hypothesis that it's not a real thing was not able to predict the future. Therefore, your hypothesis is a weaker hypothesis. I'm not going off of belief. I'm not going off of direct experience. I'm going off of future testable predictions.
Yeah. No, I see where you stand. I got it. I see. So you kind of need the same thing when it comes to like people proclaiming
Yeah.
that God is real and whatnot.
Yep. Need future testable predictions.
Yeah, I don't think. Good luck with that. I
Well, I mean,
don't think
the Bible says when you
anything.
die, you're going to go to heaven and see him at the pearly gates. That's a great, great piece of evidence.
That's yeah, but then yeah, I don't know. You need it now, not after. The matter of fact, I would say
I'm
it's
fine to
like
wait. I don't mind.
you're okay to wait.
Yep. It's a novel testable prediction, so when I die, I will know who was correct. That is sufficient.
So
It's a
I want to ask
falsifiable
you one.
hypothesis.
I want to ask you a serious question. So when that happens and you do get to see God, what would you do then?
I
Would you
would
say to him,
literally
"You're
just
right"?
verbatim quote Stephen Fry and just be like, child cancer? Why?
Uh, even then,
Yes, he's immoral. If I discovered God was real, I wouldn't worship him. I'd say he's a moral monster.
yeah, I would caution you there. But
What's he going to do? Send me to hell for not believing in him?
and that's, I mean, that's not something, that's not a place that I would want to see you in.
Well, no, so remember, I'm not going to believe and I'm going to die an atheist. Then I'm going to go to heaven and see God. So I'm already going to hell, right? And so at this point, it doesn't make a difference. And so I can just make fun of him all I want.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, how do you know? God is the only one that judges. So I don't know, neither do you.
Is there a worse option than hell? Can he just vaporize you? Is that even worse? Maybe that's better.
Well, the thing is for you not to end up there. That's the thing.
Well, I would actually not want to end up in heaven because I don't really want to be subservient to a being that I don't like very much. I would prefer not to do that. So if he was actually a moral God, he'd just let me go to my own universe. And so if you really think I'm supposed to believe in a perfectly moral God, well then if he's perfectly moral, he's going to let me go to my own universe.
I wish that was the case. I don't think that's the way it works. So
I
I'm
wish
only
that
worried
was the
about
case too. Unfortunately, the Christian God is kind of murdery.
I'm worried about you, not your arguments. In this
Well,
case, when you're talking to me about
if
God.
if God is real, I'm worried about the universe.
Well, when you meet him, we'll see.
For sure.
I just don't want you to meet him on the wrong footing.
I'll take my chances. Unless you can get him to do some novel
Uh,
testing predictions, that
no,
would be great.
that's not wise.
I think it actually is. I think literally it's the definition of wise. Proportion your beliefs to the evidence.
Okay, I mean, I would not want that for you.
I would want everyone to proportion their beliefs to the evidence. I think that is perfectly wise.